All right, welcome to part 2 of class 8 video for Art 149. This video, part 2, will be about creativity and style. So we did the technical side of things on with lenses a little bit, and also we talked about some of the creative elements of using lenses. But let's get into the more artistic side of things. So let's start with a definition of creativity. It's something that I think we all want, especially if you're in this class. It's something we all feel like, I think at times we don't have. We've maybe labeled ourselves or said, I'm not creative. I don't agree. I think everybody's creative. We're creative in different ways. I think in a person, a chemist can be creative. Obviously, they're doing some things. I think a mechanic who repairs a car is incredibly creative because they have to deal with so many variables. I think a person who writes a song is creative. I think a person who cooks a meal is creative. I think a parent is creative. I think students are creative. I know students are creative. The ways you come up with getting your assignments done just in time is pretty amazing. So let's think about a definition for what creativity is. So I'm going to pause here for just a second and ask you to think of what your definition of creativity is. What's your definition? So let's give a dictionary definition, and that is the ability to transcend traditional ideas, patterns, relationships, create new ideas, new forms, new things, interpretations, originality, progressive imagination. Those are some kind of the things we talk about with a traditional definition of creativity. And I like that. That's accurate. But I can define creativity, I think, in 2 words. And I think it helps us expand what creativity means. And here's my 2-word definition. My 2-word definition of creativity is problem solving. So you've got something, you got to figure it out, and you come up with a solution. So that in photography, that someone wants you to create a picture of them. Well, the problem is, how do I do that? How do I show what that person looks like? Obviously, you can do this, and that's one way to do it, or you can do something more creative. Either way, you've solved a problem. Same way when it's time to eat. You have a problem, you're hungry, you have a solution, let me cook something. I will combine these ingredients. Maybe a problem is, I don't have time to go to the store or interest in going to the store, so I will use the resources in my refrigerator and pantry to create a meal. Problem solving, creativity. Does that help? So I hope with that definition, you embrace the fact that you are a creative person. You may create differently than other people in different ways, and that's awesome. If we all created in the same way, it would be very boring. Very boring. If we all created in the same way with our cameras, it would be very boring. So now creativity is part of a personality. It's part of a lot of things. So one of the things I want to talk about just kind of briefly is things that get in the way of creativity, and then things I think that, in my experience, help promote creativity, that problem solving. So let's start with things that get in the way of creativity. Things that get in the way of creativity, that stop creativity, that, for whatever reason or another, when these things happen, you're just not creating stuff that's as interesting. So those things are the FBI. I like things that come in 3s, so I'm going to use this as an acronym, FBI. So the F is going to stand for something, the B and the I, okay? Acronym. So the first thing, and probably the most important thing that gets in the way, the most common thing I should say, that gets in the way of creativity is fear. Fear of failure, fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection, fear of if I show this, and fear of vulnerability, fear of so many things. And sometimes this is a fear of like an institutional fear. When you're in an organization, a structure, a system that, you're not encouraged to try new things, to take risks. And probably the best example that you've probably experienced of that, or the most common example you've experienced, is school. School is very fear-inducing. What if I get the wrong answer? So yeah, we're encouraged in at least in American classrooms, especially in up to high school, to encourage to get the correct answer more than ask the question why. Yeah. So fear. If you overcome this hurdle, wow, that's a big thing. So that's the F, the fear. So if you can name it, be aware that, okay, why am I not feeling creative right now? Or why am I not even starting this project? If you can name fear as a thing, an element that's getting in your way, that's huge. And then if you can figure out what you're afraid of, what your specific biggest fear is, then you can work to potentially address that, or just say, in spite of that fear, I'm moving forward. I know it's easier said than done. The B in the FBI, in things that get in the way of creativity, is boredom. Boredom. So you're just blah, blah. So when you're bored, you're not excited. You don't even want to get out of bed. That kind of feeling, depressed in effect. Again, if you can name this as I'm bored and therefore I'm not feeling creative, a solution to that is start creating. Often that is the cure to boredom. I'm going to kind of just take a little sidetrack here. I recently read a number of people are starting to say that in modern, especially Western culture, with these things on us all the time, we're losing the gift of boredom. So that's a little different than my easy fit into the FBI acronym here. Boredom, when you're like, I'm not busy at this moment, is awesome. Because then you can daydream. You don't have to always be engaged with stuff. So I would encourage boredom from that sense. Not the boredom of the blahs and nothing sounds interesting, but the boredom of, hey, I'm waiting in this line. Let me think about what I want to do when I get my camera in my hands. Rather than, well, let's check Twitter and let's check Instagram. So let your brain have some rest. Let your brain explore at times. That kind of boredom is a good thing. The I in FBI that gets in the way of creativity is insecurity, in my easy 3-word definition here. So this is a more personal thing. This is your history, your feelings of success or not when you've created things. And if you feel like, well, nobody likes what I'm doing, that's a big deal. And I would encourage you to, in this class especially, as an artist especially, start with creating for yourself. That's a big cure for insecurity. Not worry so much about what social media is going to think, even what your family's going to think, what your instructors are going to think. Again, in an art class, I give you frameworks to create things, and go play in that. Think about things that are interesting and engage you, get you out of the boredom, and go with that. It's a process of a journey and discovery, and it's going to take you some time, but man, it's such a fun journey. So if you can get over this insecurity, name that as one of the things that maybe get in the way of your personal creativity. Try and figure out the sources, the obstacles you've had, how you can set up new patterns in your both thinking and behavior to work around that. So that's the FBI: fear, boredom, insecurity. Those things, obviously there's lots of other things, but those things get in the way of creativity. As a kind of meta moment here, the coming up with the FBI as a definition of things that get in the way was, I think, creative. It happened as I was driving, which is where lots of thinking sometimes happens for me. So let's get to the creativity, things that promote creativity. So if the FBI gets in the way of creativity, what do you think helps promote creativity? It's another 3 words, 3-letter government agency. The CIA. You're right, the CIA. So here's the C for CIA. Things that promote creativity, and that's concentration. So that's focused time, focused space, focused energy. It's where you're in the zone. Okay, you're in the zone. Sometimes you only need 10 minutes for it. Sometimes you need 10 hours. So, and different tasks or different things you're creating will take different amounts of time. So leverage the time, create the space for it. I'm so grateful that I have a room that I can dedicate to my creativity around electronic things. So I'm grateful for that. This is kind of my creative space. See if you can find your own spaces, your own times, your own ways that you can find concentration, where you're in the zone. Turn off your phone, my phone is always on do not disturb. So it doesn't ring, it doesn't make sounds. It'll occasionally buzz at me if my son calls, but because he's on my VIP list. But other than that, it's just in my pocket and waiting for me. So reduce distractions. Just like I encourage you to reduce distractions in your photos, reduce distractions as you're creating. Find the spaces that help you and ways and times that you can be there and fully present. Okay? And it'll be different for different things. Okay. The I in the CIA of things that promote creativity is inspiration. So when that feeling, when you're just like, I can't wait to see what I come up with, when you're excited, when you saw something that you said, ooh, I want to do that, but in my own way over here with the camera instead of music. So maybe music inspires a visual. Maybe food inspires a visual. Maybe a dream inspired a visual. So when you're just excited, that attitude, that time when you're thinking, this is going to be cool. So inspiration. And then the A in CIA is anticipation. Again, where you're just excited to see what you come up with, that you can't wait to get started. So it's an attitude. Both inspiration and anticipation, they're really attitudes. So is boredom. So is insecurity and fear. So all these things are very much internal things that you do have control over. You may feel like you don't, but you do. It's naming them, creating awareness around them, figuring out how they got there, figuring out how to address them, and then ways that you can create new patterns and behaviors and habits. CIA, concentration, inspiration, anticipation. I was pretty proud of this one because all the words end in ION and it's CIA. Yeah, I think that worked out pretty good. So anyway, FBI, CIA. If you can remember those things, think about those things anytime you're stuck, because that's what we're going to talk about next. So if you've done much reading about creativity, any thinking or poking around the internet around creativity, you might have come across this quote, which is inspiration is for amateurs. So I know inspiration is the I in CIA, but this is a little different. This is I don't feel like taking photos. I don't feel like doing this. I don't feel like creating. And if you wait for the feeling, and that's what the rest of the quote is all about. So here's the full quote. It's by a guy named Chuck Close, who is an illustrator, I think. He's an artist of some kind. So inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. So as a student, you can't wait for inspiration when you're creating something or when you've got a deadline. So here's what this quote is all about. It's that stuff in the blue bold there. All the best ideas come out of the work, the process. So in the midst of creating is where the inspiration comes from. If you're just sitting around waiting for creativity to happen, pretty unlikely that it's gonna happen, because your brain's, you're thinking about, what am I having for dinner? You're thinking about, what am I watching on TV tonight? Whereas, as soon as I pick up a camera and go out, now I'm concentrated. I'm in this, so I'm going to start thinking differently. I'm going to start working. And when I do that, I have a much better chance of creating something. So creativity comes from doing the work. And you will get better at it. You will get, the more you practice, it's a muscle. Just like, working out, you'll get stronger the more you do it. So there you go. Some thoughts on creativity. If you have tips and suggestions, that things that you found, both attitude and practically, so your attitude and the practical things you can do that are helpful for you creatively, leave them in the comments below, or send me an email, or leave them in the discussion for this class. Okay. Let's talk now about style. Obviously, I'm not a great one to talk about this, as I wear my blue flannel Eddie Bauer shirt over a black sweatshirt with blue jeans and socks. Style. I've had the same haircut since 7th grade, so it varies in length, but it's the same haircut. Style. And that's the thing about style, is I'm going to use that language because it is, it's more common. I would normally say voice, because your voice is uniquely you. Style, I've heard it said, style is something that's so awful it has to be replaced every 6 months and changed. But style is a word that we can get our heads around. And so let's talk about a definition. So a definition of style is the way you do your creating, whether it's writing or painting or photography or cooking. It's the way that's uniquely you, that the thing that you make ends up. There's a result of the way you did it, how you did it, the elements you used to do it. That's your style. That's your style. And then the next question is, how does that happen? How do you get that? There's a couple ways. I've had you watch a video with Sean Tucker about, imitation versus creating, original stuff, and using imitation to help you be creative and to be a springboard to being creative. I think style happens in hindsight. When you look back and go, oh yeah, I used to do that, now I do this. I do it differently. The art I create is different than it was last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even last week. So the things you do over and over again, as you create, the results at least, are what I would call style. That thing that's uniquely you. You can do it even if we give you the same camera, the same subject. The thing you create will be different than the thing I create, because we'll do it a little differently. And another question I think that's important to ask around style is, should it change and does it change? And my answer is yes to both. I think my personal style has changed around photography, not around clothes and haircuts and even glasses. Jeez. Yeah. This is, well, I've had this, gosh, almost 20 years probably. Anyway. All right, so my photography style has changed, and I'm glad it has. I look back on old photos and I go, yuck, it's not what I would do now. And that's growth, and that's good. But it's also, if you're creating things that are an evolution of the style rather than a revolution. So I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it in a little bit different way every time. And then all of a sudden over time, you've got a big change maybe, or maybe a subtle change. There's no right or wrong answer to this. Again, what I want you to think about with this is awareness. Think about, how would you describe your style? Just like there's, you might describe how I dress. How would you describe my photos? How would you describe your photos? What are common elements as you look across the photos that you love the most of your own? So I want to show you some examples of style that maybe has changed and is different. So I'm going to start with a musician, Miles Davis. So this Miles Davis album, Kind of Blue, it came out in 1959. Depending on who you read, it's the best-selling jazz album of all time. I like it quite a bit. It's really good. I even have a used LP of it, vinyl. So this is 1959 Miles. He's wearing a suit and a tie, and there you go. This is 1970 Miles. So 11 years later, Bitches Brew. There's some version of this. I think the back has a naked lady on it. Yeah. So naked lady. I sound like I'm 7 years old. Sorry. Or in 7th grade. Anyway, a little bit different. This is not suit and tie Miles. This is experimental Miles. This is electric Miles. This is different. And then let's go to 1985 Miles. And this album is called You're Under Arrest. And it's a CD, compact disc. Look at that, CD. Yeah, so a little bit different. Miles evolved through the years. So the times changed. He changed with them. Influenced by influencing. So yeah, Miles had a big influence throughout the years, both musically and somewhat culturally on things. So I'm going to show you next some photographers. A few of them I know. The first one I'm going to show you is Deanna Rivaldo, and she is, when I mentioned the 50mm lens, the person who used that, this is her. So I think all these photos you're going to see were taken with this fabulous 50mm, it's a Canon lens, the 50mm. So portraits and weddings and puppies and events and all sorts of things, all taken with one lens. And they all have this kind of similar vibe. I always joke with her, she's glowy. Her photos have a glow to them. So she tends to expose a certain way, compose a certain way, and her subjects tend to be somewhat similar. So there's a style in that. Next up, this guy. This is a photo from about 10 or 12 years ago. These are mine. I kind of like it. This is about 10 years ago, about 5 years ago, and about 2 years ago. So there's some similarities here. There's some minimalism. There's compositionally kind of some rule of thirds thing. So there's a lot of similar stuff here. But I think, at least I feel like as I've evolved, I've moved more and more towards simplicity in my style. That's kind of my thing. Yeah. Next up, I've got some photos from another friend of mine, Megan Paulson. Her Instagram is it still Megan Taylor Creative? I think she still has that or something similar. But she's outdoorsy. She's into rock climbing and traveling, and these photos kind of reflect that. They have a similar post-processing vibe. A lot of the style, aside from obviously the content of the image, is coming from the post-processing in software. Another photographer, I don't know this guy, but I really like his stuff. His name's Brian Meneer, a fellow Fuji user. Definitely a style here, really, really strong. If you look at his Instagram feed, especially, his style comes a lot, obviously, through subject and composition. He's a lot of center aligned symmetry kind of stuff. But I always know his photo if I'm kind of doing the quick scroll. I'll pause and notice his photo because it's got this red orange to it. That's part of his style, and it's done in post processing. This is Brandon Waffle. He's pretty popular on Instagram, and he gets copied a lot. He does these color mixes. So he's got these, I call it kind of bubblegum, cotton candy. So pinks and blues. And he's been quite a bit copied on that. If you go to his website, he shows you before and after and how he does, he does some behind the scenes, but he shows you before and afters, which is quite fascinating. A lot of his stuff, again, comes through post in the processing of the image with software. So, elements of photographic style. How do we get that? What is it? It's different for everybody, but I think these are some things to think about. So it starts with you, who you are as a unique human being. You are formed as a product of obviously your genetics, as well as how you were raised, your personal experiences, your current situation, plus the times you live in. 2020. Yeah, so there's that. Throw in your influences. What do you read? What do you watch on TV? What do you listen to for music? What movies do you see? Who do you hang out with? What do you eat? All that stuff is influences. So some of the external things that are affecting you. Your environment, as I mentioned, this year. Oh my gosh, this year. The weather. Your subject choices. What do you gravitate towards taking pictures of? Your compositional preferences. Where do you like to put the camera? How do you like to arrange things? Are you minimal? Are you, I want foreground, background, midground. I want to be down low. I want to be up high. I want to use wide angles. I want to use telephotos, all those things. How you post-process. That'll evolve over time as well if it hasn't already for you. The more experience you get with software, it becomes a neat loop of, as I'm creating photos, I'm also thinking about how I'm going to process them. And that influences a little bit how I create the photo initially in camera, because I know what I'm going to do when I get back to the computer. So it's a neat loop. And then time. Over time, this is going to change because your influences, environment, blah, 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 all that stuff's going to change. The external stuff, you're going to get older. Hey, welcome to this side of the hill. I'm on that side. It's going to change. So there you go. You're going to have a style, a voice, a uniquely you way of creating. And I hope you embrace that. I hope you celebrate it. I hope you explore it. It is a gift both to you, and the things you create are a gift to hopefully other people when you share them. So yeah, just some thoughts, some thinking about style. So the next question is, what's your style? So have you thought about it? Have you thought about, how would I define my style of photography? What is it? And I know what mine is. So just for fun, take a minute, write that down, maybe write yourself a note, and then set a reminder, check it in a year. Would you say the same thing? Ooh, that's kind of cool. Do that. Yeah, do that. I'm going to do it too. There you go. Some thoughts on creativity, some thoughts on style in photography. Far from exhaustive conversation about these things, but I hope it's a beginning point for you to think, for you to be aware of, pay attention to, so that, when you're struggling, when you're not creative, not feeling it, or you're not liking what you're seeing on the back of your camera, you can think about these things and see where maybe the limitations are coming from, where the inhibitions are coming from, all that good stuff. All right, so this concludes part 2 of class number 8 video. Hope it's been helpful. As always, the invitation is to you to send me an email with any questions, comments, personal experiences you want to share. Also would love to see you in a Zoom time. It's a great way to have conversation that goes beyond what we can write with our keyboards. So look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to seeing your photos, what you're creating, and your evolution in this short time we have together is going to be fun. So until I see you again in another video, stay well, have fun creating photos, wash your hands, do all those things, take care of yourself, and have fun creating.